Welcome to An Unconventional Life, a podcast where we share stories about the crazy 1% out there who earned their doctoral degrees and then went on to use them in crazy, cool, unique, and unconventional ways. Here's your host, astrophysicist turned teacher, author, dissertation coach, and more, Dr. Russell Strickland.
Hi, this is Dr. Russell Strickland, host of An Unconventional Life podcast, where I feature stories from the unconventional 1% who not only earned their doctoral degree, but also went on to use it in unusual, exciting, and unconventional ways. We follow their journey through their lives and careers. And today, I have with me Dr. Jeremy Weiss. Dr. Weiss has conducted literally thousands of interviews of successful entrepreneurs, investors, and CEOs. And today we're flipping the script a little bit, and he's going to interview me a little bit about what I do with Dissertation Done.
Dr. Strickland, thanks for having me. We're going to talk about an interesting question. And you have one of my favorite stories on this, but the question is, are our doctoral students smart? And before we kind of explore that a little bit, people can check out dissertationdone.com. Obviously, if you know Dr. Strickland, if you don't, he's kind of rocket scientist meets management consultant. And he's been mentoring thousands of students over the past couple decades. I don't want to make you sound old, but that's just the truth. And he serves his own pain because he basically had this pain when he was studying astronomy and astrophysics at the University of Chicago. So if you have questions, and he basically helps people with their frustration of actually getting their dissertation done. So you can email them, call them on the website. They've helped thousands and thousands of students over the past years. So Dr. Strickland, are doctoral students smart? So
this is a question my daughter asked me a few years back. I work, I have an office at home, and I work from home most of the time. And she overheard me at some point talking to one of my doctoral students. And at the end of the conversation, she came up to me and asked, do you have to be smart to be a doctoral student? And I said, well, yeah, I guess you kind of do. And I said, why are you asking? And she said, well, I heard you telling your student that they were going to ask you for homework each week. And I said, okay, I know where this is going. She's like, well, you see, my teacher gives me homework every day. And if she doesn't give me homework one day, I'm smart enough not to ask her for it. And so I said, well, okay,
she has a point.
Fair enough. Okay. But then I asked her, what if your teacher said that you have a math test this week? What would you do? And she said, well, I would study for it. And I said, okay, what would you study? And she said, well, whatever the teacher told me the test was on. And I said, well, what if the teacher just told you the test was on math? She stopped and thought about it for a minute. And she said, I guess I'd want her to tell me what to do. And I said, yeah, like maybe to get some homework so you could study for it. And she said, okay, I get it. Because that's really what's going on with the dissertation. I tell students that there's more in common with their final doctoral class and the classes they were taking in third grade, like how old my daughter was at the time, than there is in your final doctoral class and your dissertation. They're really that different. When you go into your third grade class, they tell you that you need to read something. Here's a paper we want you to write, and then I'm going to grade it. When you go into class in college, read this chapter, write about this prompt, we're going to grade it. When you go into your final doctoral class, it's the same thing. But when you go into the dissertation, it's not. It's now, you're just out there in the middle of nowhere. Students have described it as like kind of being blindfolded and stumbling around, kind of feeling their way through. They've described it as being like stuck at sea, like lost in the middle of an inky black sea with nowhere, they can't see where they're supposed to go at all. It's really frustrating for students when they get in the middle of it. And so that's why having some homework from week to week can be really, really helpful.
One of the things you talk about that's really important is begin with the end in mind.
Yeah.
So talk about that as far as how you help them navigate.
Well, so there's really there's a very common approach that a lot of universities, dissertation chairs, what have you, will tell students about, or they will at least imply to students. They'll tell students things like, pick a topic you're passionate about and immerse yourself in literature. These two things that they'll ask you to do. And I could go into that in a lot of detail, but I don't want to do it today. The point is that it's kind of like you get a hold of something that you want to work on, and then you just start moving forward. I like to use the metaphor of a bloodhound. If their little boy's lost in the woods, you can get his t-shirt or sock or something and let the bloodhound sniff it. He'll get the scent, and then he doesn't know where the little boy is. But what he knows is, I think I should go a little to the left this time, or a little to the right, or straight forward. And they just keep going where it feels like it's right, but they don't know where they're going really, or when, or if they're going to get there. Now, in this bloodhound metaphor, bloodhounds can lose the scent. And that's really, really tragic. But the thing is that that's the same way a lot of dissertation students function. They get a topic and they don't know exactly where they're going with it. But if they go a little this way, it doesn't feel right, so they'll go a little that way. And they'll keep moving slowly and kind of randomly through the process, hoping that they get to something good at some point. Well, this is where I come up with this idea of begin with the end in mind. You see, what you need to do is you need to know where you're going to start with. And it doesn't have to be good. It just has to be good enough. That's another thing that's very important. But once you have a destination in mind, it becomes a lot easier to figure out what the path is to get to that destination and to take the most convenient or the shortest path to that destination. We like to use a kind of a GPS metaphor, because when the bloodhound, best case scenario, he's going to find a little boy lost in the woods using the same path that a scared little boy lost in the woods took. But if you get punching the GPS, it can tell you, do you want the fastest route? Do you want a scenic route? Do you want the most, comfortable drive, the shortest route, whatever? We always take the fastest path to graduation. And so having that end point, that destination, so to speak, in mind is really important.
Yeah. Yeah. It's the bloodhound versus, do you want just a laser pinpointed GPS taking you to exactly where you need to go?
Exactly right.
So, you start with the end in mind.
Mm-hmm.
What's another thing that's helpful for people along the journey that you say, okay, now we're on the GPS, we're plugging it in.
Right.
What's the next helpful piece that people should know about?
So punching the destination into the GPS is great, as long as you have a GPS that's going to tell you what to do after that point. So for most people, you won't know exactly how to get from here to there, even though you know where you're going. It's helpful. If that's where you're going to the right, you're not going to start veering to the left for very long. You're going to figure out you're not going the right way. But it's really good if you've got someone, an accountability partner of some sort, who can keep you on track. And it needs to be somebody that understands what it's going to take to get you to that destination. Obviously, we do that for our students. I don't want this to just be a big commercial, but we do that for our students. We provide ongoing guidance and support. That's where the idea of the homework assignment comes in, because we take students who come in and say, hey, I had like a 3.8, a 3.9, a 4.0 in all my doctoral classes, and now this dissertation is really kicking my butt. And we say, well, what if we turn the dissertation into class again and give you homework? And so that's kind of the idea of having guidance and direction as you go through this as well. There's a number of ways that you might be able to get it, but make sure that you're getting it from someone that really knows what they're talking about and is clear about this idea of, you got to begin with the end in mind. You got to know where the destination is. And your goal is not to change the world. It's just to earn your doctoral degree. You can always go out and change the world as a doctor once you graduated, if that's your intent. But don't do it as a student, for gosh sakes. No one goes out looking for a student to help them solve their problems. And you're paying the university for the privilege of being a student. So live your life, do your life's work after you graduate.
Yeah. Yeah. It makes perfect sense. Like, I want something that gives me turn by turn directions, and not just kind of a general direction. Any final words, Dr. Strickland? I want to point people towards, we talked about some of the stumbling blocks on another episode. So
Right.
About big pitfalls and things to really look out for, so you don't have those missteps along the way, to save you time,
Right.
energy, and money. Any final words about our doctoral students? Smart, and people will check out dissertationdone.com for more information. But any final words on that?
Well, so just one thing, we already mentioned the idea of having, when you want to choose between kind of the bloodhound approach or a GPS type approach, obviously that's the smarter way of doing things. But some students like to think that they are heroic in that they've done this all by themselves. It's like, kind of Atlas with the world on their shoulders or something along those lines. And really, I want you to think more along the lines of being smart and getting the tools and the resources that you need to get things done. Because really, no one's going to care that you toiled and you persevered and you made it happen versus, hey, I got it done in a year. They're going to be like, whoa, that's a superstar. And you don't have to tell someone, oh, I used a coach or whatever like that. I don't think that most of the interviews that Michael Jordan does, he references all the coaches he's utilized, his own personal coaches, in addition to coaches that the team provide for him. But he sure as heck had them. And, in most of their interviews, big investors and CEOs and so forth, they don't spend all their time talking about their coaches. They talk about what they did and the methods that they used to get things done, because they are the one getting the work done and they are responsible for it and all of those sorts of things. So on the lines of being smart, make sure you're thinking about this process in a smart way, and you're not trying to be kind of heroically strong in getting through this, but instead you can be smart and efficient. Get all the help you need, utilize all the resources you can, keep it honest, keep it ethical. You want to be able to look at yourself in the mirror when you're done and say, I earned this doctoral degree. But beyond that, don't cut off resources that can really help you. That's the best thing I can say about being smart about this whole process.
Great. Everyone check out Dissertation Done. Dr. Strickland, thanks for having me.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being here, Jeremy.
This has been An Unconventional Life. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed today's episode, subscribe now to keep getting inspirational stories of unconventional lives as soon as they're released. Until then, go out and live your best unconventional life.